Hare Krishna. Does this work? No. The most crippled microphone stand I've run across in quite some time.
Yeah, one day we returned and it was just different.
Yeah. That helps a little bit, not much.
Maybe if I lift it up, then like this, and like that.
No, it's not going to be lifted up. Old-fashioned mic stand.
So much for this mic.
Hare Krishna. Works perfectly every time. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Gyananjana Shadakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Titam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Shahagana Lulita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhopyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sadi Bhutali Daivam Mam Sadi Yagyam Chame Viduhu Prayanakale Chakatam Prayanakale Pichamam Devidur Yukta Chetasa. Those in well, should we chant the verse? Or we just
this is fine if you like to just go ahead.
Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation, of the demigods, and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. Purport. Persons acting in Krishna consciousness are never deviated from the path of entirely understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation and even of the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at the time of death, such a Krishna-conscious person can never forget Krishna. Naturally, he's promoted to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka, Vrindavan. Give it a try. So, let's see. Finish the pocket stuff. Stuff in our pocket that we reserved for this talk. Good. So there are some technical terms in this verse. Sadhyagya, Adibhuta, Adibhuta, Adiyagya, Adidaiva. These are all technical terms. And in fact, in the next chapter begins, the next chapter begins with Arjuna asking, what is Adibhuta, what is Adidaiva, what is Adiyagya, what do these terms mean? And especially he asks the question, and how is it that one can know you at the time of death? This is the crucial question. Prayana kale. Prayana kal means at the time of destruction, at the time of death. At the time of death, we'll hear in the next chapter, one's consciousness at the time of death carries one to the next lifetime. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajachante kalevaram tam tam upaiti kantya sada tad bhava bhavita. Whatever we think of at the time of death determines our next destination. So the Krishna says that if one understands him to be Adibhuta, Adidaiva, Adiyagya, one can know him properly and think of him even at death. So Adibhuta means he is the governing principle of the entire material world. The material world is not without basis, without law, without control. It's not just a random assemblage of things going on, material processes. There's some direction behind it. We were discussing outside before we came in that any intelligent person can see that there's this system of red lights and green lights and yellow lights and cars that stop and go at these lights. So we may not understand exactly what's going on, but we can see this is systematic. There's some, it's not just random, that at every street corner there's a traffic light. There must be some system there. And all right, some of us will investigate, what is that system? What is stop? What is go? What is pause? And what are those street lights made of? There's glass and there's steel and there's, all of that, electrical wiring. And that tells us something about the system. But it doesn't fully inform us about the system. It doesn't illuminate for us the purpose of the system. And most especially, it doesn't tell us where did the system come from. Any intelligent person, if he's really inquisitive, will ask, how did this get started? Why is there this? I see there's a system, okay, and I understand that, the light turns green because this little element within the stoplight flips this way or flips that way, or the signal goes this way. I get that, but where did this system come from? An intelligent, inquisitive person, naturally, even an intelligent child asks, where does it come from? So that is answered here, Adibhuta, that Krishna is the governing principle or the supreme controller of the entire cosmic manifestation. It's not random, it's not just popping into existence on its own. There's intelligence behind it. And ultimately, Krishna is that supreme intelligence, the supreme personality of Godhead. This is conclusive knowledge. One may understand there must be some higher principle, there must be some higher entity, there must be some higher truth. When one goes still further, one can see that Krishna is that higher truth. He's identified in all the Vedas as that supreme personality of Godhead. And he has all the qualifications for being the supreme personality of Godhead. So he's Ishvara Parama, the supreme controller of the material cosmic manifestation, the material world, Adibhuta. And Adidaiva. Adidaiva means that there are sub-controllers. They're called devas, devatas, or demigods. Just as in a business, the CEO doesn't do everything. He doesn't control every department directly. He controls the entire business, but he doesn't have to sit in every office or every department and supervise everything. And no, he has his agents, and they're deputed with, you oversee the finance, you oversee the production, you oversee customer service, you oversee this, that. You oversee legal compliance. There are different responsibilities delegated to the higher controllers in the organization. So Krishna's organization is similar. For the affairs of the universe, he doesn't have to do everything. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. It's said in the Upanishads that the absolute personality of Godhead has nothing to do. Natasya karyam, he has no work to perform. Sabhavaki bala jnana kriyacha, his energies are doing everything. The boss doesn't have to do everything personally. He goes and plays on the golf course, but by his direction, all the affairs of the company are going on. When I was a child, I sort of always wondered, God is supposed to be in charge of the whole cosmos. So is he like doing it like a puppet master? Is he doing it with buttons? How does he control? What does it mean that he's the controller? And how does he deal with all these, millions and millions and millions of people and things? And it wasn't really answered. There's just God, he's all-powerful. And that's sort of it. But from the Vedic literature we understand he has his agents. Even on this planet, the government has its head. And he manages the affairs of the state, but not personally. He personally does the top-level business, and then his agents do the lower work. And even it's said that, Naranam cha naradipam, that the head of state is the representative of God. That God has arranged that for every government there's some head of state, and he's responsible for carrying on. Now he may botch the job, that's another thing. He may feel he's independent to do whatever he likes, that's another thing. But when things are properly set up, then he acts, in fact, as a representative of God for protecting the citizens, for keeping thieves and rogues in check, and foreseeing that the public works are being done, that the roads are in good repair, that there's sufficient stock of everything. So this is Adidaiva. So it takes the form of demigods. It's said that for the sun there's a demigod in charge, Suryadev, or present Vivashan. He's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. He's the president, as we have a president of the United States, see, there's a president of the sun, in Vivashan. There's a president of the moon, Chandra. There's a president of so many different departments. But they're not independent. Even if they sometimes think themselves independent, they're not independent. Ultimately, the final control is in the hands of the personality of Godhead. So Adidaiva and Adiyagya. For success in human life, some sacrifice is needed. Either formalized or not formalized. If I want to succeed in business, I have to sacrifice my time, my energy, so many things. If I want to succeed in education, I have to sacrifice my time, my money. If I want to invent something, Edison was sacrificing his sleep to invent the light bulb. Let me try this, let me try that, let me try this, let me try that. And he underwent a lot of trouble. He could have just slept at night like everyone else. But instead he went through so much trouble. And then he was given the credit, all right, you can invent the light bulb. So that's a certain kind of sacrifice. Even you've all sacrificed some time and convenience to come here and hear something about Krishna. That's a sacrifice. And in the Vedic tradition, there are formal sacrifices, ritualistic activities. That's a kind of sacrifice. In the Judeo-Christian tradition also, there were sacrifices. In Islam, there are sacrifices. They're, what's the word? Formal religious observances, or, yes, to offer, what shall we say, homage, to express our gratitude and dependence on God or the agents of God. So there's some sacrifice. In the previous age, those sacrifices were very elaborate, very costly, that's one thing. Huge amounts of gold and so many other things were employed for the sacrifice. They practically could exhaust the state treasury. But in the present age, there's no such facility. Who has that kind of money and who's even willing or qualified to perform such ceremonies? So in the present age, the simple sacrifice is to chant this Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But whatever sacrifice we perform, ultimately everything is under the control of Krishna. This 7th chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. The beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord. And by His grace, one can understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the same time, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how the living entity forgets Krishna and becomes entangled in material activities. By gradual development of Krishna consciousness in good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. He can also understand that this human form of life is an opportunity to regain Krishna consciousness, and that it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Well, this is the purpose of this chapter, or every chapter, to revive our dormant Krishna consciousness. Yukta Cetasa, to have our minds connected with Krishna, focused on Krishna, to be Krishna conscious. That's the natural, healthy state of the living entity. Krishna consciousness means the natural, pure consciousness of the living being. Now we're in some other consciousness, Maya consciousness, in one form or another. Our minds are absorbed in something not directly linked with Krishna, or where we don't trace out the link. Everything's linked with Krishna, but where we forget Krishna and don't see how everything is connected to Krishna. So in that consciousness, we're in an abnormal state. We forget that Krishna is the Supreme, that we're servants of Krishna. All of these things get left behind, and we chase after this or that in the material world, trying to be happy in what Devamrita Maharaj calls unnatural happiness. Unnatural happiness. So the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to bring us to natural happiness in Krishna consciousness. And the beginning of that, the process for this, is to associate with devotees. Simple thing. We don't have to do something very, what's the word? Something very taxing, something very laborious. We just have to associate with those who are engaged in the service of Krishna. We're talking about Krishna, we're thinking about Krishna, we're serving Krishna. And then that natural consciousness of Krishna will also reawaken within us. Many subjects have been discussed in this chapter. The man in distress, the inquisitive man, the man in want of material necessities, knowledge of Brahma, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth, death, and diseases, and worship of the Supreme Lord. However, he who is actually elevated in Krishna consciousness does not care for the different processes. He simply directly engages himself in activities of Krishna consciousness, and thereby factually attains his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. In such a situation, he takes pleasure in hearing and glorifying the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. He is convinced that by his doing so, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Jayadvaita, and it is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. This 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is the substance of that conviction. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. in the matter of knowledge of the Absolute. Well, there are many indirect processes, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, many indirect methods for reviving Krishna consciousness or achieving Krishna consciousness. But here, the direct method is recommended: to associate with devotees and directly take up the activities of pure devotional service. And maybe I'll stop here and see what kind of questions you might have. If any. Yes.
How is it that by associating with devotees, we become Krishna conscious?
How is it that by association with devotees, we become Krishna conscious? That's natural. The Krishna consciousness is already there in the heart. It's not something thrust in from outside. It's already there. And Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Koriya Yudai. When our consciousness becomes purified, then that natural consciousness is reawakened. How does it become purified? Shravanadi. By hearing, chanting, remembering Krishna. Hearing is the basis of all of it. We're chanting, but how are we chanting? We're chanting because we've heard. We've heard Hare Krishna, and now we can chant Hare Krishna. How are we remembering Krishna? We must have heard something about Krishna. How are we offering prayers to Krishna? We must have heard something. Rukmini Devi became attracted to by hearing. So hearing, and how will we hear? In the association of devotees. If we associate with others, they'll say, oh, Krishna is just a mythological hero. Oh, Krishna is just a manifestation of a higher truth. Oh, Krishna is this or that. But they won't serve Krishna. And they won't factually understand Krishna. But if we associate with devotees, then pure hearing can take place. True hearing can take place. And by that hearing, our Krishna consciousness is reawakened. It works that way. In a more ordinary sense, whoever you associate with, that's what you become like. It's not only Krishna consciousness. If you hang out with thieves, you'll become a thief. If you hang out with some other kind of person, you'll become like what they are. Our association is so important. And so from that point of view also it can be seen. Is that all right? Okay. Something else? Okay. Yes?
Maharaj, for those who struggle to chant or think of Krishna in his personal aspect, how can they think of Krishna? In what other way?
For those who struggle to think of Krishna in his personal aspect, how can they think of Krishna in one other way? Well, they can think of Krishna impersonally, of course. That's what they do. Those who are not sufficiently fortunate as to be able to think of the personality of Godhead can think of his lesser features, less inclusive features, the Brahman feature, impersonal, Paramatma, God within the heart. So that's also a beginning. Or they can think of Krishna in terms of the universal form. Pritak Tvena, what is that? Hoda Vishvato Mukam. Ekatvena Pritak Tvena, Bahuda Vishvato Mukam. Where's that?
That's ninth chapter. That's ninth chapter.
Ninth chapter. After Ananya Shantiyantoma.
Yeah, 9:15.
I think so. Yeah. Let's see. Where is that? I thought I saw it, but... Ektatvena Prataktvena Bahuda Vishvato Mukam. Yeah, you can find it for me. Krishna says that the pure devotees are always chanting my glories, they're always engaged in Krishna consciousness. But then there are others who are not directly Krishna conscious. Ekatvena Prataktvena, they're thinking of Krishna in terms of impersonal oneness, or they're thinking of the demigods, that each demigod is somehow an independent representation of absolute reality. Or they're meditating on the the universal form. The universe is God. Even some of our scientists, they have a sort of leaning in that direction, that there's no personal God, but the universe itself is my idea of God. So they acknowledge God, but they don't directly see the personality of Godhead. But they can at least apprehend the existence of God in these lesser aspects. But better is to acknowledge the personality of God. Is that okay?
Marge, it's
Yeah.
chapter 9, text 15.
15. I probably skipped over it 4 times. Jnana, yeah. I was right, it is Satatam Kirtiyantam, always chanting my glories. Then there are others, Anye. Mahatmanas tu mam parta daivim prakritim ashrita. Bhajanti ananya manaso gyatva bhuta. The great souls are always chanting my glories. Then there are Anya, those who are not quite the great souls. Jnaniya Gyena Chapyanya. They're performing, they're trying to approach the Absolute by knowledge, by some systematic process of knowledge. They're worshipping me indirectly that way. Or Ekatvena Prataktvena, as in oneness, or in terms of the multiplicity of gods, or Vishvatamukha as the universal form. Yes, Madhuri.
You said we get our next life, what we think during our...
Could you speak loudly,
Grand
please?
life.
Joor se boliye.
He said that we get our next life, what we are thinking at the time of death.
Yes.
So I saw, in case of like somebody's getting bullet in the head, and
We hope that the person getting a bullet in his head is thinking of Krishna. If he's
Actually,
practicing,
my question is,
yes.
can they think something that they get their next life like that? Someone getting a stroke and dying within like second. Someone in the artificial ventilator, artificial respiration getting, and they are like no consciousness they have. So how
Consciousness is there, but it's covered, that's all. But some consciousness is there. So if he's practiced, then he'll think of Krishna. And if he's not practiced, he'll think of something else. Generally whatever we're absorbed in during life, that's what we'll think of at death. There was a crash of an airplane
Yeah.
many years ago. There's been many since then, but many years ago there was a crash. And they recovered the black box where all the talk in the cockpit, among other things, is recorded. And you could hear the pilot, he's trying this, he's trying that, he's trying this, he's trying that, everything's failing. And finally, "I love you, Ma!" And that's the end of the tape. Means at the time of death he thought of his mother only. If he'd practiced, he could have thought about Krishna. But instead, maybe he became a woman in his next life. He could have said, "I love you, Krishna," but no, "I love you, Ma." So whatever we think of during our life, we'll think of that at death also. Abhyasa. Therefore, abhyasa yoga yuktin, and one should practice thinking of Krishna. It's not going to happen automatically. If you want to learn music, you have to practice. If you want to understand anything, some skill, you have to practice. So to think of Krishna also takes practice. That practice is Krishna consciousness. Yes.
I have a follow-up question on that one. I was thinking, wondering how to analyze the situation I was in. In the late 90s, I was in a car accident, and some other car, it was their fault, like someone without a license, they kind of veered towards me, and I was driving, and I sailed across about one lane this way, and then 4 lanes that way, and then went up a bank. My car flipped over, and Hare Krishna Maharaj was chanting some Hare Krishna kirtan in the car that I was in. And the person in the passenger seat next to me, I think they were Krishna, calling to Krishna. I think I was trying to maybe not I'm not sure that I was focused on thinking of my eternal life. I think I was focusing on trying to save our life within this body, trying to avoid the crash being bad or worse than it. So I guess I'm just wondering, I feel like the person in the passenger seat, because they were chanting Hare Krishna, their destination, if we were to, obviously, I'm clearly turned out fine, the passenger did too. It was funny, we crawled out, the car was upside down, we crawled out, everything was fine. But, so, the passenger next to me, had it turned out that she passed away, my guess is her destination would have been quite good, because she was chanting. For myself, I know I was hearing Hare Krishna Maharaj, but I was really focused on
That's also
accidents.
service. Arjuna is driving the chariot of Krishna. So that's also like chanting Hare Krishna. He's engaged in Krishna's service. Both things are there. Not to say that we won't practice chanting, but in the context of devotional service, chanting is one item, and practical activity is also wanted. Not that these are just material activities, and chanting is spiritual activity. Krishna's business is also transcendental.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything else? Okay, we can stop here. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nanyas chintayanto mam ye jana.
Just wondering,